It's Nolan. What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everyone is doing well on this Monday afternoon. If not, hey man, we got Kendrick news for you, which I know is a big deal across everywhere. Everybody's been waiting on this man to speak, say anything, come outside, peek his head out, anything to keep the momentum going for the momentous year that he's been having. As of today, he's got a new interview out with Harper's Bazaar. He was interviewed by SZA, so this is going to be an in-depth interview. We're going to go through the whole thing. I've done this previously on my channel before. If you're new here, I've done this for Megan Thee Stallion. I've done this for Saweetie. I've done this for Beyonce. When these text interviews come out for high-profile artists, I love to go through them and see what's going on in the mind of the artist, what's going on in their plan, some of the thoughts and ideas that were going into the things that we've seen from them. I did the same with Dave Free earlier when Not Like Us came out. He had an interview that dropped. We went through it. So we're going to do the exact same thing today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you've already read the interview, this is going to be round 2. But I know a lot of people out there don't read. So most people are probably going to get their information about this interview either via Twitter or some other social media channel. And, you know, we low-key got a little book club, reading club over here where we do this anyway. All right. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to run through what Kendrick has to say to SZA and see what type of questions she asks him. I hope that she prods and, you know, kind of understands what we want to know about Kendrick at this point. So let's get right into it without further ado. All right. Kendrick Lamar's inner drive. The artist has consistently pushed hip-hop to new heights. In advance of his Super Bowl performance, he gets personal with friend and collaborator SZA. So SZA comes in. She says, "We shot a movie last night. I've never shot a movie before, so I was freaking out. It's a lot of being scared to be myself. I'm either going to pretend it never happened or not show up to the premiere. I met Cat Williams on set. He told me I was mentally ill, like as a compliment. He was like, 'Sa, I believe you might have some mental.'" And I was like, "Illness?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, welcome. I want to ask you about your mental health. Do you feel like you suffer from mental illness or experience it ever? Or do you just feel like you're in a multitude of feelings and you're not putting a label on it?" Kendrick says, "I grew up with that term. I was hearing it when I was 5, 6 years old." She says, "So you identify with it, but not as it." Kendrick says, "My whole thing is it's all experience. I say some shit on a record and identify with a moment, and then I don't identify with it anymore. That's just growth for me. All that shit is subjective." So here he's talking about mental health, and he says he talks about things on record. Basically, music is his therapy. I think that's pretty much the simplest way to put it. Music is his therapy. He lets it all out in those sessions, and although he may identify with it in that moment, he then moves on and continues his journey. She says it's giving self-therapy. Kendrick comes back. "I think it's going back to my inner child, right? I was trying to understand myself, trying to find people I could relate to, how to identify myself outside myself. It sounds crazy to a lot of people. I really can see myself out of my body. When I do that, I have no judgment toward it. It's too many eyes on me to not remove myself. That shit is scary to anybody else." She asks, "Is he scared?" He says, "No, because I've learned that I can't identify with my performances on stage." Very interesting. "I can't hold my true whole identity to that person who's on stage, because if I did, that means I would judge every movement, every time I fuck up a lyric, every time I'm off key. It's too much to deal with." Now, I don't want to harp on this because we are on the Harper's Bazaar interview, but I remember at the pop out, he flubbed couple lines here and there, and I was like, oh man, I really wanted him to drive the stake in with a perfect performance, and people was like, Kendrick didn't mess that up. He's perfection. Well, he just told y'all he don't judge every time he messes up a lyric, so clearly it can happen. I just be putting this stuff out there so people understand when I speak about Kendrick that he's imperfect. He acknowledges that as well. Okay, just for the new stands out there. Let's keep moving though. He says it's too much to deal with, so I have to have a distance between the performer and the person I close my eyes and look at the ceiling with. I had to develop that tough skin at like 16, 17 years old, not knowing it was not only for my career, but for myself. It's mentally ill for sure. SZA says it's very honest. Speaking of honesty and ego, have you done ayahuasca? Kendrick says, I haven't. So although he prescribed it to Drake ass, nigga, try this shit, bye. She says, what? I wonder how you're arriving at all these conclusions. I want to talk to you about your spiritual practices. How many spiritual practices contribute to your day to day, excuse me. He says, all day, every day. She said, all day is ceremony. He said, ain't no bullshit, ain't no cliche. But I literally talk to God. Like it's to a point where I'll be starting to think I'm going crazy, but then he has to remind me, no, this is really me. My early morning practice is that I have to run. Okay? Fitness. When I started running, that's where I started to understand. There was this threshold of pain in the spirituality for me. I remember my shins was aching and I was like, I got 1 mile to go. Then I get whispers and downloads and start talking about shit that I want to know about. And next thing, I'm 3 miles in, 4 miles in. I wake up and do that shit every day. SZA says loss of self. You have to break yourself. He says, I have to. She says, I'm grateful for the God T. Sidebar. What do you feel like your top 3 contributing factors to self-transformation in the last few years have been? The power of honesty and being honest with myself, perspective about the person sitting across from me, and learning that vulnerability is not a weakness. The last one probably being one I'm still developing. She says, which one is the hardest? He says the last one. Why? We talk about our childhood. I hate going back to that. It's traumatizing. My pops, he was tough. He was militant. As far as every day you are expected to go to work, take care of your family, get back up to do it all over again. Father time. Being a man type shit, right? And he never showed never showed no weakness. He never showed any emotion that could garner a one-up from the person sitting across from him, and I learned to experience that not knowing I had them same traits, right? But for what I do, there is certainly no growth without vulnerability. If I understood the power of vulnerability earlier, I could have had more depth and more reach to the guys that was around me in the neighborhood coming up. You know, our parents, they never had these outlets to express themselves the way they wanted to. I've always looked at us as somewhat of a beacon of hope for them. I always wanted to know, how does your mom feel about your self-expression? SZA says, you know, my mom grew up dark-skinned in the 50s. My mom integrated schools in St. Louis. She made herself smaller to be polite and non-problematic Audrey. And growing up in the burbs where we were one of the few black families, she kind of passed that to me. She's developed this delightful energy that she really truly does have. But also I feel like deep down she really needs to beat some ass and she'll feel better. When she told me about how she spent so much time monitoring herself, people be like, oh yeah, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. When you talking about it's time to vote. She says, but I'm my ancestors' wildest dream because I can be a bitch and I'm okay with that because my mom wasn't allowed to be a bitch in her space or in white spaces. And I feel like that's my duty to literally get in here and be like, I'm going to do what I want. And I feel like my mom at first was really uncomfortable with me saying crass things and behaving in a certain way. And she was embarrassed, even though she was proud. And then something happened when it started to free her. She started moving things around in the house, designing the house and being free. She didn't grow up with money or anything, so it's scary for her to think about renovating a crib or having something for herself. She never even imagined what her dream house could be, so it's like it scared her. It just fucked her up. She was upset and embarrassed, but now she's like freed by proxy type shit. Kendrick says, you gave her that. So these are very interesting topics that they're talking about. Kendrick's reflecting on his father, how he was tough, how, you know, we've heard this story, right? I got daddy issues, that's on me. Tells you, you know, no days off, get to it, take care of the family, no vulnerability. Nigga will never have one up on me, right? For our SZA's mother, she's somebody who grew up in segregated town, you know what I'm saying, where she could not, you know, be fully herself due to the restraints of the time and the area. So now her daughter is an adult and, you know, basically freeing up opportunity for her to basically have more opportunities and choices in life. And it took her a while to even get adjusted to the fact of something simple as renovating a house or tailor making things to how you want them to be in your own space. And that's something I never really thought about for older people that grew up in that time. All right, let's move on. SZA says, and she gave it to me. When was the last time you cried? When was the first time you cried? Kendrick says, I would say the last time I cried was probably on Mr. Morale on the Mother I Sober record. That shit was deep for me. She asks, would you say you've done more crying recently than you have in your life? He says, now, yeah, I have to. It's cleansing. This is SZA, of course. Kendrick says, it might be easier for you, though. SZA says, I cry all the time. I'm going to cry right now because that is just beautiful. Wait, you didn't tell me when was the first time you allowed it to happen. Kendrick says, the first time I allowed it to happen is documented actually on stage when Dre and Snoop and the whole West Coast was out, and they was like, this is the torch that we're handing off. Dre passed me the torch, and a burst of energy just came out, and I had to let it flow. My tears is all on the internet, and now I look back and I love that moment. I love that happened because it showed me in real time expressing myself and seeing all the work that I put forth actually come to life in that moment. So he's saying the first time he allowed himself to cry was on stage when Dre, Snoop, Game, Corrupt, Daz, and all of them was out there. I think DJ Quick was up there too, giving him that torch to say, you now lead in the West Coast, you the new nigga. That was his first time crying. She says, that was emotional and pretty. What do you want for yourself now? What's your driving force? Do you feel like you've done it all? Do you feel like now it's all for the plot? Is the plot you? Is further self-discovery the plot? Is it domination? Kendrick says, it's funny. I was asking myself that this morning. I get fulfilled sharing my experiences with the youth and allowing them to hear these stories and hear these experiences and catch up to them. So to actually answer your question is communication just with people in general. And I feel my work in music is just a start. I don't think it's my end goal. I know it's not my end goal. Music is just a vessel for me to get there. SZA asks, do you have an idea of what you're supposed to do? Kendrick says, I don't. I'm curious, and that's what keeps me energized. All right. She asks, do you even have a desire specifically of what it should be, or are you going to let God shape it for you? Kendrick says, I'm going to let God shape it. I love the mystery of it. I have to have it. I have to, the chase of it all. You know what I'm saying? SZA says, you're so teachable. Kendrick laughs, says, shut up. So, nice dynamic they have here. Very free-flowing conversation, as they alluded to in the beginning there. So let's keep going. She says, you are. That's what I feel like I suffer from. I'm not teachable for real. That's my problem because I always be like either in my fear or do some shit. I have a low pain tolerance, but a high competition tolerance. I can't explain it. What is it that you want the most if you want for anything? Kendrick says, information. I want it all. I want the resources. I want to meet people smarter than me. I want to talk to them. I want them to show me things. I just want to be fulfilled with whatever this world has to offer. This shit hypes me up. Information. I'm a motherfucking nerd for it. You is too. She says, I am. This shit is a mystery, and I love it as a mystery. I love it. I love that the answers could be wrong or right. SZA says, you have such father time energy. It's very universal dad vibes. Actually, it's more universal sensei. It's almost gender ambiguous. It's father and mother because you actually seem quite in tune with your feminine energy. Do you consider yourself in touch with your feminine side? Kendrick says, I have to balance both. At first, all I knew was the masculinity, and I always kept that wall up because of my pops. But the more I delve deeper into my music and the more expressive I get with myself, that is the feminine energy right there. That's not the bravado that I grew up seeing all the time. This is who I am, the soft-spoken me, and I have to own it. This is where my superpower lies, because if my job is to communicate, I need to be able to communicate with everyone. I need to be able to sit in front of SZA and talk to you in a way where you feel comfortable, in a way where it feels authentic from me to you, you to me. And I can't do that with a wall up. I can't do that with my full masculinity. Big fucking facts. Which is why, you know, taking it off Kendrick Lamar specifically, a lot of artists, especially male artists, come into this music industry. They're very terrible at doing interviews because they don't want to be seen as weak, right? And a reporter or a journalist or a radio host or whatever tries to find out things about you, and the artist may even feel like you trying me by asking that question, right? So then they put up this aggression where they start being a little bit tough with the interviewer, and it just creates bad chemistry in that interaction. So Kendrick is saying he had to learn to embrace his femininity so that he could express himself more comfortably and have conversations that also make the other person comfortable as well. SZA says, can I ask you a hypermasculine question? You can also tell me to shut the fuck up. What does not like us mean to you? Here we go. Kendrick says, not like us. Not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent. Now, if you identify with the man that I represent, SZA says, break the man down for me. Thank you, SZA, for prodding further. He says, this man has morals. He has values. He believes in something. He stands on something. He's not pandering. He's a man who can recognize his mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes, and can dig deep down into fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling like he's less of a man. If I'm thinking of not like us, I'm thinking of me and whoever identifies with that. She says, now, can I say something else in that realm, or you want me to get away from that? Can I ask you something else? He says, is it mean? SZA says, no, it's more so like, I thought it was really interesting that there was any consensus at all that you might be an angry individual. For me, I don't find that any energy that comes from you comes from an angry place. And actually, the last hour and change pretty much solidifies that it's almost from a yogic, monk-like place. So when you feel the surge of energy in records like that, where is that root? Is it anger? I want to know who had this idea that Kendrick was just some angry ass nigga. Like, where did that narrative come into play? So Kendrick says, I don't believe I'm an angry person, but I do believe in love and war. And I believe they both need to exist. And my awareness of that just allows me to react to things, but not identify with them as who I am. Just allowing them to exist and allowing them to flow through me. That's what I believe. SZA says, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead before I say something crazy. Wonder what that something crazy is. No, she definitely don't want to get in between the two parties. All right, so Kendrick says, okay, now let me see what's going on with you, man. What I've always loved about you and respected about you is your ability to fully express yourself. How have you been able to navigate that through your music? Do you dread it coming out through certain lyrics? She says, I wrote a song last summer that was too honest and I couldn't put it out. I just be telling on myself so crazy and I can't stop. It's like I have to tell on myself so I'm not bored, because otherwise I'm just like, what's the point? When I'm in the studio, it hurts too much sometimes. Maybe that's why I tap in and pretend to be other people. That's why I'm pretending to be you, or pretending to be Frank Ocean, or pretending to be Future, because it's easy. It's easier. That's very interesting. I didn't know she did that. It's easier to be me through their eyes than it is to sit with some of the really harsh things that I say about myself to myself. I guess I want to say nicer things about myself, so I'm like, I guess I shouldn't look through my eyes. I should look through somebody else's. But when I heard Mr. Morale, I was like, I'm not digging deep enough in my art. I'm running from so many things. So now I'm in my bag. I'm like, okay, I'm codependent. I'm a people pleaser. I'm afraid of all these things. I'm so fucking selfish. All these things I tell myself because I have to strip the ego from the bottom. I have to because I'm bored to death with this iteration of myself. Why am I trying to not be human so bad? Because it hurts so damn bad. But that is the job. No matter how many spirits you talk to or any of that, it just doesn't matter. You have to be here. You're going to be in the ether eventually. It's just not now. That's a very interesting piece from SZA about her creation and how she speaks through her music to herself and about herself. And she's basically telling us that she puts on other personas in order to become comfortable speaking about herself in a positive light, or just period. Very interesting. Kendrick says, that's what I'm talking about. I appreciate you. SZA says, I'm laughing at myself for crying, but thank you. I appreciate you too. Kendrick goes, I'm proud of you. I'm not only proud of your artistry, I'm proud of you in the sense of carrying and respecting who you are and being able to go through emotions and aware of it and say, okay, this is me. I can either grow from it or I can put it away and come back to it. That's what I get from you. I think you got a good sense of it, just knocking out the fear of it all. She says, I got to do what you're doing. Your philosophy of when it gets too hot, that's when you got to go closer through it, all the way through it until your shins is burning. I want to take it there. Of course, that is going back to his running philosophy. All right. So that's that. Okay. So big up to Kendrick Lamar and SZA for doing this interview. I think we got a bit of insight on both of them as people, right? It wasn't a one-sided conversation. It wasn't just questions about Kendrick Lamar, where he stands, what's going on. We did not get a glimpse into his future or his plans or any sort of album or anything like that. But I do think the fact that Kendrick Lamar is speaking at all is an indication that we're in the album cycle. It was reported that we were in the album cycle earlier this year, but just keep in mind that those words were not from Kendrick himself, right? He came in to perform a mission, which he accomplished it, passed it with flying colors. Drake was the one that was like, oh, you on album mode? And some other people were talking about album mode. Now we're getting a little bit more information about an album on the way, you know, from people that are in the TDE circle. SZA reposted something about the K. Dot album and all this stuff just last week. So we're getting more and more little tidbits, but it's very Where's Waldo? And that's kind of how he is anyway, right? The fact that he did an interview with anyone is pretty interesting to me because he doesn't do these things. Unfortunately, we don't have video because we could have just played that rather than me read through it. But I enjoy reading through this stuff with y'all, man. It's an opportunity to kind of slow down the conversation, slow down the content creation process, which is actually very cathartic for me as a creator, because a lot of times it's about pumping out content, just getting to it and staying abreast of whatever's going on. Y'all don't understand. Some of y'all do because y'all create yourselves, but it's a lot that goes into this. So I actually enjoy reading through their thoughts and their own forms of self-therapy, or how they take their personal lives and put it into the music in front of millions. You know, it's easy to be vulnerable to 25 people, but to do it for goddamn 10 million is a whole nother thing. And to be universally recognized for it by strangers. So I salute them in that. We did get the whole Not Like Us thing, which he's still, you know, asking Kendrick Lamar about his songs, if you've kept up with his career, is never like the best thing to do. Because when you ask him about his songs, he never gives you a straight answer. And I'm not saying like he's being like he's deviating or being dishonest, but more so that once he creates the music, whatever meaning it has to him is something that he keeps personal, and he allows the fans to develop their own interpretation based on what the feeling is. So anytime you ask him about his songs, again, if you've kept up with his career, he never goes in great detail about the thought process behind a lot of his work, because he wants to know what it made you think or feel while experiencing it. And that's been consistent throughout his career. Okay? So once again, that's Kendrick Lamar and SZA for Harper's Bazaar. And we're just going to have to stay tuned and see what's next. If there's a single on the way, if there's anything on the way, right? Daylight has been teasing music, but I think he's talking about his own stuff at this point. So I would not read too deeply into what Daylight's talking about. He revels in the controversy. He revels in the attention. That's how he's been since his battle rap days. If you don't really know Daylight like that, that's what he lives for. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Let me know what y'all thought of that interview down below in the comments. Be sure to like and share this video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Become an insider. Okay? Much love and respect. I'm going to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rags. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit, I'm an almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more to survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef for computers, I'm straight out the sewer, we come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. With drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I've been dropping these haters like calories. Cross I'm out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.